Hello and welcome to Really Cool People, a podcast produced by Schweitzer Church. I'm your host, Jason Leininger. This is a place to hear stories of really cool people. And the hope is that as we listen, you and I will be inspired, encouraged, and challenged through moments of serendipity. In a sermon entitled The Weight of Glory, C.S. Lewis said, "There are no ordinary people. You've never talked to a mere mortal." It is a joy over the next few moments to introduce you to somebody who may seem to themselves somewhat ordinary, and yet they are a really cool person. Today, we are going to meet Molly Edwards. Molly grew up in Southern California, in Orange County. She met and married Dennis. And then after they were married for a year, they got the idea, along with his brother, to move to Missouri to try their hand at farming on 635 acres. 6 months in, they decided they needed something different. And so they both were doing other things, teaching, investing in building their own family, and investing in the communities in which they have been a part of. This interview is going to simply be sweet because they enjoy some really simple things in life. So it's my joy to introduce you to Molly Edwards. We are happy to welcome into the podcast studio, Molly Edwards. Welcome, Molly.
Thank you, Jason.
Glad you're here.
I think I am too.
Let's start with your story, Molly.
Well, I'm a come hither. I was born in Southern California, and we moved to Missouri after Dennis and I got married, a year after that. His brother wanted to farm, and his dad supplied 635 acres between Mansfield, Missouri, and Ava, Missouri. And I'd never lived on a farm before. Dennis and I lived in the old farmhouse, and we had never farmed before either, but we got jobs before we moved here because we knew that we probably weren't going to make it as farmers. So anyway, we taught at Norwood, a little wide spot in the road between Mansfield and Mountain Grove. And our first graduating class had 7. And I taught English 7 through 12 every day. And Dennis was the high school principal, the volleyball coach, the drama coach, sometimes the janitor, and a Spanish teacher.
Who took care of all the plumbing?
Nobody.
Nobody?
Not us.
No?
But it was a very unique experience for us moving from Southern California to Missouri. We were very happy we did it, and it just was a big change for us, more culture shock than we realized.
Of course.
Yeah, we crossed a creek to get home, and sometimes if it had water in it, we had to tie our car to a winch and put it on a tree and kind of winch it across. So it was quite the adventure. So for us, and I never thought of it as culture shock at the time, but I'm sure that's what it was.
You mean that wasn't a daily occurrence back in Southern California?
Oh, no, not at all. I grew up in Santa Ana, California. I was born in Altadena, and my dad was a banker. He wanted to be an architect, but he supported his widowed mother, so he was a banker. And my mom wanted to be a designer in Paris, but she was supporting her mother, who was widowed. And so as a result, she designed and made clothing for us our whole lives, our wedding dresses, everything. And she's also sewed for missionaries at our church. So
that's an interesting combination of like sewing for missionaries and then doing all the clothes for your kids.
Yeah, because we were all quite small in stature at that time, and the missionary could not find clothing that fit her. Huh. And so Mom took patterns and figured out how to do it and make her some useful clothing for the mission field. And she was, very grateful. That was my mom. She was very creative. So,
what was your part in helping in the clothing industry there?
Well, I sewed. Of course, I took home ec for a year. Mm-hmm. That was required. Anyway, and didn't enjoy it particularly. But after I went to college, I had a sewing machine from Dennis's mother. I sewed in college, made clothing sometimes. And then after we moved back here, I sewed quite a bit. So I don't do it as much anymore, but I do enjoy it.
Mm-hmm. So you moved to southern Missouri or south central Missouri, took up farming.
Yep.
What'd you do on 634 acres?
Well, his brother wanted to raise corn, which was ridiculous because it was very rocky, of course, down in that property. And we had cattle. We had twin calves one time. That was pretty fun. And we lasted for about 6 months. And then we told his dad that we knew it wasn't going to be a go and that we couldn't be farmers. So we moved into town and built a small FHA house and lived there for the remaining time we were there. We were there 2 years.
So your anticipation that it wouldn't work out proved to be true.
Yes, very much so. His brother was in charge, and so he was a music teacher. So anyway, we just, it wasn't the life for us. We couldn't make a living at it. We enjoyed being out there very much. It was beautiful. But our calling was teaching.
So then what did you do after you moved into town and you were there for 2 years, and then what?
Well, we decided we wanted to have kids. And so we moved to Ozark. Dennis got a job teaching special education and started his first master's degree. I substituted and I taught adult basic education 2 afternoons a week. And then about 5 years later, we had Megan. And then 3 years later, we had Peter. And then 2 3/4 years later, we had Emily.
4 kids.
3.
3 kids.
Megan, Peter, Emily. Yep. So it was, I was home with my kids. My mom had always been home with us. She didn't ever work after she had children. And we didn't know if we could do it. But we decided we'd do it as long as we could. And I waited till Emily was in kindergarten before I went back to full-time work. So, yeah.
Do you have memories that you treasure from that time when you stayed home with the kids?
Yes, a lot of memories. I sewed a lot. We played outside a lot. We lived on a hilltop, and I'm trying to think. They loved reading. Peter would always bring me a stack of books that we had to read before we could have breakfast. And so my kids have always been great readers. So,
what kinds of books were in that stack?
Oh, just a few of the Sesame Street, because those were new then, but they were some of the classics, the fairy tales. Some of my books from home, actually. Some of my old books. I have some very old ones at home, like something for Popsy, a table for Popsy or something. And anyway, so we just kept I like old things.
There was a book my grandmother used to read to us, not just to me, but to like my brother and I and other kids that she would watch. It was Little Black Pony. And so then, like when I graduated high school, that was one of the gifts she gave me, was that book. And so I've read that book to my kids too.
Oh, that's really special.
It really is.
Yeah,
I mean, those books from when you're a kid.
Yes.
Then you share them with your kids.
And the Laura Ingalls Wilder series, we read all those. And the Narnia series, we read all those together. And, it was just, we didn't have a television. I grew up without TV. And when my grandmother moved back into our house and I shared a room with her, she brought her small television and my mother was horrified. So, well, it was because my mom didn't think that TV had any good influence, and it probably doesn't in some ways. But anyway, we didn't have a TV until Megan was, I don't know, maybe 10 or 11, and his brother had brought us one for Christmas because we were deprived, he thought. So, yeah.
We had a similar experience, Anna and I did for a long time, where we didn't have a TV. And then Black Friday came and somebody was visiting us. And so they came back with a TV VCR combo.
Okay.
So that our kids could, the boys especially, watch some VHS stuff.
Yes.
Yeah, but up until that time, we'd lived many years without a television.
Yeah. I didn't miss it growing up. We played outside a lot. There were tons of kids in the neighborhood, and we did a lot of imaginative play. My father took an old wooden piano box and made me a playhouse with wax paper windows. And I had orange crates because oranges were very plentiful there, and that was my furniture. So we did a lot of fun things, but it wasn't.
Did you add on to it?
No. In fact, it remained there long after I could even fit into it, probably.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was. But
that's ingenious to take an old piano and
piano box.
Piano box.
The ones that, they came in wooden crates before, and so my dad was a carpenter also, and so so
fun. What else did you do? How many siblings did you have growing up?
2 older sisters. Susan's 7 years older than I am, and Nancy was 5 years older than I am, and she was my second mom. Huh. She taught me all the stuff about when I became a teenager. Got my long hair and how to wear a tight skirt, stockings, all those things.
Why did your sister teach you and not your mom or your?
Because my mom was very private, I guess you would say, and she relied on my sister a lot. We were very close, and both sisters helped me a lot growing up, even though they were quite a bit older than I was. So, yeah.
So what were some of the games or some of the things you do with your sisters, like socially, out and about, outside the
house?
Yeah, outside the house.
Okay, we played badminton a lot.
Yeah.
We played croquet. We did plays in our garage. We did The Great Shrinking Machine. My sister wrote the stories. And she'd take a regular piece of clothing and put it into this mysterious box. And then it would come out as a doll size, of course. And we'd invite all the neighbors, and we'd put the benches up. And then the mayor of our street, who wasn't really the mayor, but we called him that, bought everybody ice cream from the ice cream truck. So I have lots of good memories from growing up.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. We did a lot of fun things, and that was just life then. It was a little simpler, I think. We didn't have so many clubs and sports for girls anyway. So,
did you play any sports?
No, I was a klutz.
Yeah.
In junior high, you had to play on mixed teams with softball and maybe kickball. I don't remember, but nobody won me for their team because I was not very coordinated. So,
where was this at in Southern California? Where you going?
I lived in Altadena, California, and then we moved when I was 3 to Santa Ana, California, which is about 20 minutes from Disneyland.
Okay.
And we lived. It was 3 blocks of houses. It was tract housing, but everybody made theirs different, of course. And then behind that, we had a row of eucalyptus trees, and then we had a whole orange grove to explore. And that eventually became housing. But as kids, we really enjoyed that.
Was that in Orange County?
Orange County, home of the John Birch Society.
John Birch Society. That's poking a point in my memory bank. But
very ultra conservative.
Really?
Yeah. So anyway, but it was known for other things too. Good schools.
Well, also in Orange County was the Crystal Cathedral.
Oh, yes. It's still there.
Yeah. It's now a Catholic cathedral.
Really?
Yep.
Well, Dennis knew the Schuler family.
Okay.
Because through his neighborhood, he lived on the other side of town. So, but he knew them. And Jill Schuler was a couple of years older than I was. Yeah. So, yeah. It wasn't so famous, growing up. We went to a relatively small Calvary church. It was called Downtown, and it was non-denominational. We had a Russian pastor, which was a bit controversial at the time, Reverend Samsvik, and he was a great Bible preacher. And it was an old mortuary. And I mean, it had the columns in the front. It looked like a Southern plantation is what it did, and they added on to it.
Uh-huh.
But it was a very active church. And
Did you say it was Calvary Chapel?
no, Calvary Church.
Calvary Church.
Uh-huh. There is a Calvary Chapel,
Yeah.
but I think it's down in Costa Mesa, maybe.
Well, Calvary Chapel turned into like a, almost like a denomination unto its own, because there's Calvary Chapel churches all over the country now.
Yeah. This was Calvary Church, and it's still there. They moved out to Tustin, but it's the same. It's a real thriving church. So anyway, I was brought up there. My mom taught Sunday school there.
So having a Russian pastor, this would have been what, in the 50s, 60s?
Uh-huh. Yeah, my dad did not like that. My dad was not a regular attender at church, and I think that was one of his excuses for not going. And Reverend Stanczyk was a pulpit pounder.
Wow.
So
you had a Russian pastor and the John Birch Society within the same county.
Yeah.
Poses all kinds of colorful aspects of life.
It was a very colorful growing up. But the church was very instrumental, in my training. And my mom always made sure we were there, and we always went to Bible school and all the activities and everything. My dad would come along sometimes, but my mom was really the influence in my spiritual growth.
And then this missionary that you mentioned earlier, like, how did she fit into that picture? Did you meet her through the church?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Our church sponsored a lot of independent missionaries. We'd have a map with different people on it. You've seen those before.
I have.
Yeah. And I would say that our church leaned towards Southern Baptist, maybe, in looking at it in retrospect. But she came in, and Mom used her talents to make her some clothing.
What country did she go to? What was her field of service?
So overseas, I want to say maybe the Philippines or Africa, but I don't remember for sure. So, and we collect things from the missionaries and things like that. It was very active with missionaries.
Oh, yeah.
And they'd come and speak. We'd have missionary nights.
Sure.
So, yeah.
Where'd you end up going to college?
Westmont College in Santa Barbara, California, where my sisters went.
Okay.
And my parents were very comfortable with that. It was a Christian liberal arts college. It still is. Yeah. About 1,000 now. It was 800 when I went there. Fine education, great professors, small campus. And I still connect with many of my friends from there. We still get together. Though we've lived all over the United States, and one of them has been a missionary and just returned. So, yeah. So it was a very good education. I feel I got my student teaching through them, and it was a beautiful campus. You could look out in the Pacific Ocean and on a clear day and see some of the islands out there.
So thinking about that just provoked me, that thought that it was a clear day, a clear day. When you were living out there, smog was really a growing issue, right?
Yeah. Dennis played football, and they had to practice in the El Toro Marine Base. I don't know what you call them, the shelters that they use for the big helicopters and planes. Anyway, they would practice out there so that they weren't out in the smog so much. Yeah. It's when we go back to visit, it's actually quite clear now. You can see a lot more.
Yeah, you can see.
Saddleback, the mountains and everything. So, yeah.
So what was it like to have that kind of experience? With some of the smog, yet sunny days, lots of sun. And then you move to South Central Missouri.
Yeah. Well, I like the seasonal changes here. That's a big treat for me.
Yeah.
And I like snow. I don't like ice. And I love it out here. We have been very happy here, and I can't picture us anywhere else.
You raised your kids here?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. We moved up to Ozark, raised all our kids there, and then moved into Springfield in 97. And then when the kids were all gone, we moved out of the split level house and moved to a 1-level small house. So that's where we are now. We moved 4 years ago, and it's perfect for us.
Yeah.
So Yeah. Our kids said no more stairs. So,
There comes a time for that, doesn't there?
oh, yes, very much so.
Did you take your kids back to California?
We did one year in 1987 to 88. We worked with the Amnesty Movement, if you're familiar with that. And it was a 1-year program, federal program, to allow people who wanted to apply for legal citizenship to go through all the steps. And since Dennis taught and knew Spanish, his brother thought it would be his other brother thought it would be a good idea for him to come out and work there for a year. We lived in Orange, California, and I taught in a small elementary school, just mornings. And Dennis ended up taking a job at a junior high in Long Beach, California, to finance us during that year because, it was expensive living out there, more expensive than 3 house payments here, So anyway, we rented a house and we had a wonderful year out there. We had lots of interesting experiences, especially him, with meeting people who had wanted to become citizens for many years and met all the guidelines, but they didn't know how to do it. And so he enjoyed working with them.
Yeah.
So, and sometimes we'd look out in the morning and we'd have a bunch of immigrants in our front yard waiting to come in.
Wow.
So it was, they were all so excited, that they could apply for legal citizenship. And that was our year there. And the kids really, I think, might have stayed there, but we moved back. So,
how do your kids think about California now?
My oldest plans to retire there, but that will be a while.
Yeah.
And the others have no desire. So it's just my family is all moved. My oldest sister is up in Northern California now.
Okay.
And so that was the only living family I had out there after my parents passed. And then Dennis's family had moved and spread out, and we don't have many relatives there anymore.
Okay.
But Megan and Brian really like California, so we'll see if they end up doing that. So.
Yeah. I've been to California a few times. I find it very incredibly interesting, and I've always appreciated the weather and have been amazed at the kind of vegetation that's available there.
Yes.
And the kind of the fruit basket or the, for the country is out there. So it's an incredible kind of environment.
It's a land of varieties too. Northern California is entirely different than Southern California. So I don't miss the traffic. And there's certain things. We enjoyed the beach a lot. We've always missed that, but we are very sure that we're led to this place.
Yeah. So then you moved to Ozark and you've got your kids. Then you go back to teaching.
Yeah. I went back to junior high teaching. I taught history and English for a while, part-time for 2 years. And then I did 8th grade English, honors English, and mythology. For the remainder of my career, I retired in 2008.
Do you miss teaching?
I do.
What was your favorite subject to teach?
Well, I liked African American history with literature because I like history. Roll of Thunder, Hear My Cry was one of the books that we read. And then we read The Diary of Anne Frank, which I've always liked, and brought in the history of that. And I liked mythology, and we had world mythology and we had Greek mythology. So
when you read The Diary of Anne Frank, did kids make it through all the way to the end?
It was in a play form and in our literature book. And then the kids would sometimes fight over who was going to be the person that did some of the character reading that day.
Really?
Yeah, they liked it. It was a story that was totally different to them. Many had never heard of her. And so I was able to, bring in the World War II history and some of the prehistory. And we talked about that. Lots of good discussions.
I just saw that play back in the spring, and I got to the end. I mean, I wanted to stand and clap for the
Mhm.
people, but I also wanted to just sit and weep
Mhm.
because it's just such a
Mhm.
incredible story
It is.
and
It is.
such a tragic history,
Yes.
poignant history.
And if Meep hadn't saved her writings, we
Yeah.
would not have any of that today.
Yeah.
And I know her dad was reluctant, very reluctant to share them, and then finally agreed to publish them.
Mm-hmm.
So,
And then the other book you mentioned before that.
Roll of Thunder, Hear
Yeah.
My Cry by Mildred Taylor. It's a series.
Okay.
And it's set, well, it goes back and forth in history, but a lot of it is during the Depression with a Black family and the experiences that they have in town,
Mm-hmm.
the interactions that they have with other Black people and white people in the South. And just, it's an inspirational story and sometimes and totally tragic in others
Mm-hmm.
because the kids were so marked by the way that they were treated.
Yeah.
So it's been a favorite of mine.
How did what did you see happen on the faces of the kids you were teaching as they encountered this kind of literature, or maybe even as they encountered the mythologies that you taught? Did you see like light bulbs go off, or did you see?
That's the best thing when you're a
Mhm.
teacher, but I think the discussions were the most interesting. What the ideas that the kids came up with, and just we even did some cooking in combination with some of the literature units. Like for the Depression era, we made Depression era recipes at home and then brought them in. I made
Uh-huh.
homemade bread for the kids, and we talked about how people ate and what kind of life that they had during that time. And then with Greek mythology, of course, we had to have some Greek food.
Oh, yes.
So
Yeah.
it was interesting. Anything you can do to get kids involved and thinking was my point. So
Do you ever encounter students, or people who had been students of yours, out moving around within the confines of this community?
not very often. I had a favorite student, Brad Diaz, and his brother, and he came to my house about 3 years ago, and he had this little puppy in his hands, and he said, "Mrs. Edwards, would you like a puppy?" And Dennis is behind me shaking his head, "No, no." And I said, "Yes, I'd love a puppy." Because we had Mom's dog then. Mom had died, and we had a miniature long-haired Chihuahua. I've never had small dogs, but anyway, this was a little. It's a registered dog actually, but it had been turned loose in the streets, and the man did not want it back.
Wow.
And so Brad rescued it and brought it to me, and we still have her.
So is Brad still one of your favorite students?
Yeah, he is. He moved. He was living in our subdivision, but they moved to a different house. But yes, always a big bright smile on his face, and just a really nice guy. Yeah. I think about my students. I don't know that I recall all their names, but Ozark was a really good place to teach, and I think it still is.
Did you ever count up how many students you had?
No, never did.
No?
I mean, sometimes we had classes that, we had 34 in, and then we'd have smaller classes that maybe had, in honors English, I'd have maybe 15. And so that was a treat too. You had much more interaction with the kids then. So
a lot more space for them to give voice to their thoughts, right?
And it's safe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. My mythology classes were, I would say, 80% boys usually.
Really?
It was an elective class, and they really loved that mythology, especially all the warfare, things like that. So, I enjoyed teaching. I was ready to leave. I felt that I was ready to leave when I retired, but I was ready to do some new things. So,
So what came after retirement?
Grandchildren.
Yeah.
I have 6 of them, and they go from 3 to 18 in ages. So it's a span. And none of them live here in Springfield, but, 2 are within driving distance and the other one's in New York. So, and we're going to see them next week. So that's fun.
That is fun.
Yeah, it is. It's really different being a grandparent because you can do all the fun stuff and you don't have the care of them all the time. So, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. Well, I don't really know what you mean, not yet.
Yeah. But I hope I know you'll have that opportunity.
There are some young kids who come around and spend some nights with us every now and again.
Uh-huh.
And it's like a surrogate window into grandparenting.
Yes. Good preparation.
Blessing. Yeah, it is.
Yeah. After I retired, I said yes to everything. And then I quickly found my limits because I really didn't know what I wanted to do. I knew I didn't want to go to club meetings or anything like that. I wanted to do something that would be active. And we got involved in Safe to Sleep and worked with them for a while.
You want to describe what Safe to Sleep is? Because some people who will listen to this won't know what that is.
It's a women's shelter, and it's at Dale Street Methodist. Sorry. Yeah. It's an older church. Bob Cassidy was there, I guess, years ago. And they have been so gracious and still are gracious in opening up their gym and their side rooms every night. I think they've had to go to stricter rules sometimes now as far as who they can let in. They have certain guidelines, but those are for the safety of everyone. Yeah. And we would go and check people in, and then usually there was food, some kind of a meal. Volunteers would bring in, and we'd visit with the ladies at the tables, and then get the cots set up and the sleeping bags, and get all that done. And then we'd each take a turn. Someone has to be awake all night, and so, or at one time in the night. So one of us would go to sleep in the office for 4 hours, and get up, and then the other one would go to sleep in that. Then in the morning, they'd be checked out and back on the bus or van, whatever transportation they had, mostly walking at that time, back to their lives on the streets. So
you did that. What else did you do?
I worked in the church nursery for a while, Bible school. I'm trying to think. I did join a book club and had a lot of fun with that. I did a lot of volunteering off the books, and I still do. I'm not really committed to meetings at all. I've had enough for teaching. So I have a group now of about 7 ladies that I visit, and sometimes we go out and have lunch together. And some of them are in care facilities, some are living at home, but they're all just great friends. And I enjoy being with them. I learn so much from them and get a lot of good advice from them. And that takes a lot of my time right now. And I bring them flowers. I bring them food. I just have fun with them. And we do things. One was a former babysitter for me when my kids were in school. And the rest are associated with the church here in one way or the other. So, yeah.
That's an incredible gift.
I feel like they give me the gift because they have such wisdom, and they put things in perspective for me. So during COVID, we had a widows group that met at our house too. And we just have dinner together at our house because there were a lot of widows and new widows at that time. And there wasn't, of course, we couldn't have grief groups and things like that. So that was something. And some of those friendships that grew out of that group are continuing. So I worked at Pittman for a while as a tutor and enjoyed that 4 or 5 years. That was fun. Working with the young kids and seeing their lives. I don't know. I help in the church prayer garden with weeding and stuff like that. Like to make meals for people who need it.
Yeah. You mentioned COVID.
Uh-huh.
So I wonder, was COVID a blessing or was it a
I think it was both.
big challenge?
I think it was a challenge because people were lonely.
Uh-huh.
And people who were grieving really were lonely. And some couldn't have funeral services and things
Mhm.
like that, which happened with Dennis's mom.
Yeah.
And it was a blessing in that we could form those friendships and support in spite of COVID.
Mm-hmm.
And we learned a lot about driving up to the supermarket and popping our trunk and getting our food delivered that way. That was a whole new concept at that time. And now
Mhm.
it's common, very common.
Uh-huh.
And I think when we finally got back together again, we appreciated people much more than we did before. We'd missed them.
Mm-hmm.
And we were able to strike up new friendships after that. I think it was so hard with all the people who died.
Yeah.
And we always felt really sad for Dennis's mom that she didn't have a service. We called her Grandma Ice Cream because she lived over at Elfindale and they had an ice cream machine. And so that was her favorite way to treat all the grandkids.
Mm-hmm.
Let's have ice cream. So she was called Grandma Ice Cream. So. But she chose, she was at the end of her life and she knew that and she chose to go ahead and die because she said that, if they intubated her, that would be something they could use for someone else. And that's what she said.
Huh.
So she said she lived a long life. She was, about 94, I think, when she died. A very full life.
So how did you end up, if you couldn't have a service then, how have you marked her life?
Well, we have a Grandma Ice Cream paving stone, which we take all the grandchildren to. We talk about her a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And a few of the kids, three older kids, remember her, because they were around when she was here. And so they remember the things that she liked to do. She baked Christmas cookies with us every year because that's what she and her 5 boys did for the neighborhood.
Wow.
And so, we talk about her a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I remember her that way.
So at some point in her life, she moved out here close to you?
The last 3 years of her life, she lived at Elfindale and then stayed with us regularly. Mm-hmm. My mother had lived with us for 3 years before that. And she was over at Donna and Dan Servan's place at the independent living. Yeah, or assisted living. And it was right across the street from where I taught. So I got to go see Mom every day. And it just worked out that she chose to come back here and be near me and instead of my other 2 sisters. And I was delighted. And so she was about 93 and a half, maybe more, when she died.
Huh.
So she got pneumonia and she just couldn't do it anymore. So
it's really amazing that both your moms chose to come to Missouri.
Yeah.
In their final chapters.
It may have been a family decision that we weren't included in. But it was fine with us. It really was. I mean, Dennis's brothers were really busy and working still, and we were retired, so that made sense. We could spend lots of time with her, and we did. So
that's a beautiful comment that you weren't included in.
Well, we suspected it, but it was okay with us. Yeah. And then I told my mom just about the month before that I was going to retire, and she said, "Oh, we can start doing things next week." And I said, "Mom, I have to wait till the end of the school year." But she didn't quite last that long. So, but we had great times together, and it was good for our children to have more access to their grandparents.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So,
you talked about both your sisters, but I know you recently lost one of your sisters.
Nancy, yes. Yeah. It's a combination of grief and anger yet, because I don't feel that she was cared for well by her doctor. We have a family history of heart disease, and I have since discovered that I have it. And she had gone in with a terrible heartburn and to the emergency room, and they did do the stents. And she had 4 wonderful days at home. And then she had a second heart attack and died. And I don't think the doctor took into consideration the family history. And she had extremely high cholesterol, despite the fact that she hiked and walked every single day and in Montana. And she took statins. So I don't, it's a question I'll have to ask God when I get up there. But she wasn't alone when she died. She had a very good friend, Bob, with her. And he had brought her back to church 2 years before then. And she had not gone to church all that time. And she went to church with him every Sunday, and she professed her faith. And that was the good part. So, but I miss her a lot because she was my closest sister. So,
do you know what kept her away from church, kept her away from faith for so long?
Yeah, she married a preacher's son.
Oh no!
No, well, she was active in the church when in Montana, Missoula, Montana is where she lived. For many years, she played the piano and Tom played the organ. It was a small church. In fact, I spent a summer up there living in the parsonage. And I think that she saw his dad as he was very forceful, I guess is the best word. He was a very dedicated preacher, EUB, but very forceful. And I think she took that as a response or a representation of Christianity. And so they just stopped going to church when the boys were young, and they never went back. So, and then she divorced Tom and was in a relationship, a very hard relationship, and finally got out of that and lived fully her last 4 years. So, but she was amazing, smart, musical. Just 300 people were there at her service. So
what do you do with your grief, your anger?
It's getting better. I talk to God about it a lot. I talk to Bob, Nancy's friend, and we talk about it because he's angry too. He really loved her, and we talk about ways to. We have a book, Healing After Loss. It's a daily devotional that's been very useful to both of us. He recommended it to me. And he talks about Nancy to me, and I talk to him about Nancy. And I think that's easing up on it. I mean, people say, it's her time. I mean, it is in God's time. But I miss her so much. She just was an amazing sister. And my older sister is amazing too, but in different ways. So, yeah. I think it helps me to identify now more with people who are grieving. And I am especially thankful for people who are present during grief. The people who showed up immediately when they heard that my sister had died. I mean, there are no words for that. So, it's a great comfort. And so I try to do that.
Friendship matters a lot, doesn't it?
It does matter a lot. Family and friendship. My parents in church, I couldn't imagine not being at Schweitzer. It's just such a wonderful church, and it's growing so much. And I feel like there's something for everyone at this church. And the ministries are relevant. There are things that I can use in my life all the time. And Dennis, of course, loves the music, and I do too. But it's been. He grew up Episcopalian, so it's been a little switch for him. But it's okay. He loves Schweitzer. You know? So we couldn't find before we tried other churches, but this fit us the best as a couple.
Well, I like it when Dennis wears his bib overalls and leads singing. Don't tell him I said that.
I will not.
Okay.
That's one of the sewing projects I have all the time is mending bib overalls.
That's something for an Episcopalian to wear bib overalls to church. That's a
Yeah. Well, he doesn't do that very often.
He doesn't, but I've always enjoyed it when he does.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
What are you looking forward to?
More time with my kids and grandkids, and just watching them grow and change. Having one in college this year has been an adjustment. Thinking about Henry being that old, and so. I know.
Have you gone to Grandparents' Day?
I'm going tomorrow.
Okay.
Well, actually, not to KU where he is. I'm going down to West Plains. That's where Emily is in administration for special ed, and her 2 kids go to a country school, South Fork.
Okay.
And so we were invited to Grandparents' Day tomorrow. So yeah, we're going to make a real quick trip back up and back because we've got a lot to plan for next week. We're leaving on a trip. So.
And then, what do you love to do with your grandchild that's in New York?
Well, we like to draw, do artwork. We like to build with magnetiles. Rye likes to play with cars and just whatever they want to do. Cooking. They like to do cooking and baking. And they can walk to so many areas. They have 3 parks right around them. And so we go to the park. We go to the zoo. We go to whatever things they want to do that day.
They live in the city?
They live in the Bronx.
Okay.
And both parents are still at home since COVID. And
working from home.
Yes.
Yeah.
Melinda is a licensed mental health therapist, and her specialty is adult Asian adoptees because she is one.
Okay.
And Peter works for a music company, of course, Eventide. And so he loves his work. And then the kids go to schools nearby. So it's always fun to visit the city. There's so much.
It's such a vivacious verb that is like all around you. And there's space to do things, and then there's space to be quiet.
Yeah. Yeah, I love New York. I wouldn't want to particularly live there, but I love the Bronx. It's quiet enough in the parks, like you say. And I have never found people to be rude there. People will always say, oh, people are so rude in New York, but I have never experienced that. They've always been very, open. So.
Our first visit to New York City, we stayed in Harlem. And after we had spent the night, we were getting ready to go out and explore. And we were trying to figure out how to use the subway.
Yes.
And so many people had compassion on us to try and explain it to us and help us get on our way.
Yeah.
I'm like, they're Midwest nice.
Yeah, they are.
Like,
give them a chance.
Oh, absolutely.
And I love hearing the languages.
Yeah. And
seeing the different outfits that people wear. It's just, it's always interesting to people watch, and that's something I enjoy doing. So.
What do you and Dennis do for fun these days?
That's a good question. We like to travel, but we haven't done a whole lot of it recently. We like to go visit our grandkids, of course. We like to garden. Dennis has 3/4 of the fencing in garden.
Okay.
He has a makeshift greenhouse he got made from scratch, from scrap wood. We raise a lot of flowers. We have a nice neighborhood as far as people are very friendly and coming over and visiting a lot. I walk with my dearest friend Sharon in the mornings. She has Parkinson's. And we walk the Ozark River Trail. Or we walk at OTC between Ozark and Nixa. And she needs to walk, but she has inspired me to walk. So we walk 2 to 3 miles in the mornings. And that's a very special time. And we get to see all the seasonal changes. And I treasure that part of my mornings. I'm trying to think what else we do. We like to get together with friends and play games. Dennis likes to putter around, work in the wood shop, and I like to sew. I like to do braided wool rugs.
Mm-hmm.
It's a little harder these days with my hands, but I can do it. So I guess that doesn't sound very exciting, but we like where we live. We like the people around us, and we like our church, and we just like doing things.
Do you guys have music that you like together?
Mm-hmm.
Or,
yeah, we like all kinds of music.
yeah.
And Dennis's octet, the group that they're in, has really gotten active. You may or may not know they go out after first service and sing at nursing homes and places like that.
Didn't know that.
Yeah. And they have a lot of fun with that. And then, of course, Joy Pickers and I think it's called Joy Singers now.
It is? Yeah.
They go out. I'm not a singer. I can sing to myself, but I enjoy the music, all kinds. And we love old people like Peter, Paul, and Mary and Joan Baez and all them. And we like to go to the symphony. We like to go to the opera. And we feel like it's a mecca here for music.
Tons of opportunities.
Mm-hmm. And plays, too.
Lots.
Yeah.
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 All throughout the year,
Mm-hmm.
lots of opportunities.
Yeah, more than you could ever possibly go to.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I guess, some days are quiet and we work around the house, and then other days are pretty nonstop, like today. So,
Do you have a book that you're reading or a couple books you're reading?
I'm reading Crow Mary for my book club, and I have just barely started it. I read Sing Me Down the River or something like that. I don't remember the title exactly, about the slaves in Haiti and Barbados. Dennis's paternal grandparents came from Barbados. And so, it was an interesting, I like historical fiction.
Mm-hmm.
I don't read like I used to. I guess I'm more engaged with doing things.
Mm-hmm.
So,
How about food? Are you guys foodies?
in our own way. Like today, Dennis is roasting salmon, and we're doing oven roasted veggies, fresh veggies.
Mm-hmm.
I made a strawberry yogurt pie. We have some fresh bread and fruit. So,
Sounds fantastic.
well, we try to make them last for several meals,
Yeah, yeah.
just to make it easier for us. Yeah, yeah. But I like to antique shop. I like old things, but I have plenty of old things at home. I don't really need anything more.
When you downsize, doesn't that make antiquing really hard?
Yeah, I just don't do it. I mean, occasionally I'll go in just to look around, but I have about 5 sets of old dishes, and some are from my mother. My mother's silver, and I hope to pass the Depression class. I hope to pass those on to my kids. They seem to be interested at this point, so we'll see. And I have the rocker that I was rocked in, and some very precious antiques. But for the most part, we live quite simply. So,
Well, Molly, this has been a real delight in
thank
the midst of the day to
Thank you.
have this conversation with you.
Thank you. It's been a lot more relaxed than I was prepared for. I'll be honest. I don't know. I love teaching in front of kids. And then, after I didn't do it, I haven't gotten up in front of groups at all or one-on-one. So it's been different. But I've enjoyed it.
Thank
very
you for
much.
coming in.
You're welcome.
I do like to ask people kind of at the end of these interviews, like if they've got a bit of wisdom that they'd like to share. Maybe there's a bit of wisdom that's guiding their life at the moment, or something that they've picked up along the way that they find themselves repeating. to other people.
Yeah. Don't wait. If there's an opportunity to do something or to visit with someone, do it then.
Mm.
Because I'm realizing how quickly time is passing.
Yeah.
And it's only, I'd say, in the last 10 or 15 years that I've had the courage to be more open. And I wish I could have done it earlier. So
That's a great word. Thank you.
thank you for having me.
Yeah. Well, a big thank you to Molly for sharing her story. In listening to Molly, I hope that you were inspired, encouraged, and challenged, and that you begin to behold the really cool people around you. The Really Cool People podcast is produced by Schweitzer Church, Springfield, Missouri. Taylor Likes is our executive producer and editor, and I'm your host, Jason Leidinger. You can help out this podcast by liking, reviewing, and sharing it. And until next time, stay cool.